Good morning. I'm Adam Teal, the Fire Commissioner and Director of Emergency Management for the City of Philadelphia. We're here this morning to provide an update on the incident yesterday in the 1400 block of South 8th Street here in the City of Philadelphia. The reality is we don't have a lot of updates to provide in terms of the situation. It was a very, as you can imagine, a very cold night, difficult night. We had companies out there through the night continuing to extinguish the fire and set up for today's operations. Right now, we haven't started any of the excavation of the collapsed buildings because we're waiting on some work to be done, some plates to be put in the street. The street has been undermined. We don't know why that is or when it happened. Could very well be from the fact that we flowed literally hundreds of thousands of gallons of water yesterday. So there's a lot of setup work that needs to be done before we can actually start using the heavy equipment to start delayering those collapsed buildings and going through that debris. We had a reception center open in concert with the Red Cross and many other partners last night until 9 p.m. At that point, we didn't necessarily have any more known calls for assistance. Folks had been sheltered by friends and family members. We remain, however, available to help anybody who needs help, particularly if this goes into another night or another day. The Red Cross did shelter somebody at the Red Cross House, which is a unique asset that we have here in the City of Philadelphia. And one thing I definitely want to say is, on that note, it was really, as we learned more and more about all the things that were happening beyond the incident, we really saw the best of Philadelphia yesterday in the wake of this tragic event, where we had neighbors helping neighbors and friends helping friends, families helping families, and a lot of folks who actually risked their lives to try to rescue complete strangers. And that was certainly our firefighters on those first arriving companies. And there were, I'm sure many of you have seen the video, there were some citizens who initially tried to extinguish the fire, which, you know, this magnitude of fire, that was not ever going to work. But we certainly appreciate the effort, and we're very glad that those folks themselves were not injured or worse in a secondary collapse, because that's what happened after our companies arrived. Again, I've seen video clips now from before we arrived, after we arrived, and then, of course, when I was on the scene. And we're really, you know, we're very disappointed in the outcome of this incident. The reality is it could have been a heck of a lot worse. And, you know, that's it's a small consolation for us. But our overriding concern going forward is to make sure that there is no additional loss of life and we keep everybody safe. So this remains a very complex and dynamic scene. As today, hopefully, we can get the street addressed, move that heavy equipment in. I know PICO and PGW are continuing to work on the utilities in that block, and those are going to sort of be up and down today as they assess the situation, and we do work and need those things to be turned on or off depending on what we're doing at any given time. So I think with that, and again, if anybody has not been back yet, or you stayed with friends last night but you're not sure that's going to continue to work, we remain available. You can call the Red Cross. That number, Guy, is
1-800-RED-CROSS.
1-800-RED-CROSS to get assistance, and our dedicated Office of Emergency Management staff is also both at the scene. We have a couple folks at the scene. We still have firefighters, fire marshals at the scene, and all of our investigation partners. I should say as well, we haven't proceeded very far in the investigation either. Obviously, the first thing we're going to do is try to understand who is still in the remnants of those collapsed buildings, and that's job number one after ensuring the safety of the entire scene. The investigation will be, again, not just us, but there are some federal agencies that are involved, state agencies that are involved. So again, that's going to be most likely be also an effort that's going to take a good bit of time. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
How much of a continuing risk is the structural integrity of these buildings to your own people?
It's a huge risk, and again, I can't say enough what the folks who were there immediately on our first arriving companies and the people, the civilians who tried to do some things. Again, if you look at those videos, the buildings continue to collapse during the course of that first 5 to 10 minutes. So it was an incredibly high risk and dangerous rescue attempt that our first arriving firefighters made. And again, to clarify, they were unable to rescue the one person we know for sure is in the debris of those collapsed row homes, although we made a second attempt later in the incident once we had enough of the fire set. We had the gas turned off, or mostly turned off, and had extinguished enough fire to actually be able to get in there. But again, trapped under a couple floors of rubble, it's that's just going to be challenging under any circumstance. So extremely dangerous and remains dangerous. Again, there's no way to truly know when and whether a building is going to collapse or components of a building are going to collapse. So our Department of Licenses and Inspections is down there with their inspectors. My sense is that we'll continue to get some structural engineering expertise down there as this moves forward. But the only way we're really going to be able to ensure that the buildings on either side of this site are safe is to start disassembling those as well. So the walls of the buildings that are there, again, we're not sure we're going to have to take those buildings down, but that's entirely possible at this point. But those are all the kinds of things that we're trying to assess now with daylight and now that the fire is actually fully extinguished.
There was an issue with sinkholes in the area. Is there any sense of whether the sinkholes may have caused the fire?
The only thing that we know about is there appears to be some undermining in the street now. That's not uncommon when we flow large volumes of water, so we don't know what happened before the incident. Our goal now is to make that part of the street ready to accept the heavy equipment that we need to put on it to start doing the excavations. Annie?
Can you update us on the potential amount of casualties that you have at this point?
I don't know that I can update you on the potential. I mean, the potential is really, we just don't know. Right now, we think there are two. There's one individual that again, that was the person that our crews initially, tried to rescue, and they were very close. And again, when the fire expanded and the building started to further collapse, that secondary collapse, pushed that person away from them. So and we made a second attempt because we knew where that person was located. But again, we can't say whether or not somebody's deceased. That's actually for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner to determine. But that is why our first concern after ensuring the safety of everybody there and all the neighbors is to get in there and try to answer that question. We have another report. We're fairly confident that there's a person missing in one of the adjacent row homes. We searched that as far as we could, and then actually again, these folks are the best in the business, so if they can't get to them, nobody can. We were cut off by the heavy volume of fire yesterday trying to get to where we believe that person, based on interviews with their family, is located. So the odds are they're still in there, and that building we're going to have to take apart piece by piece as well. So it's going to be some time. The real question as far as the potential is whether or not there was anybody walking in front of those buildings. And there's no way we can know that. We don't have any reports of anybody else missing besides those two related to this incident, but the reality is somebody could have been walking in front of those buildings. I mean, this is literally, there are 3 row houses that are fully collapsed and in the street, halfway into the street. So we're not going to know that until we start, again, this very delicate and dangerous process of, delayering and taking this debris off a piece at a time.
What do you know? I know you said that you're saying there's a lot to do here. I get it, but cause. I mean, was there work going on along that block? PGW work going on along that block? You could know that. Do you know that?
No, I wouldn't know that. That's all part of the investigation.
Well,
so,
wouldn't PGW tell you if it had a crew working in that area?
We have PGW crews working there now, and again, this is an active and ongoing incident. So despite the fact that we've placed the fire under control, this incident is still open and still active. So we're not at a place yet. We're not at a place yet as far as the trajectory of this incident to really start even looking at questions like that. We haven't got our investigators into the buildings yet. And it's going to be quite some time before we're able to answer questions like that.
No, I mean, but wouldn't you, so you're not at the point of asking PG?
No, we're still in an incident response.
Were you guys here, 2 days earlier for any reason?
Right now what we have PGW doing is supporting our efforts to get in there and perform the safety work that needs to be done so we can get in there and hopefully try to give these families with missing family members some solace and some closure.
I just want to ask you again, if I can. Have you asked PGW if they were working in that neighborhood
That's not my
prior
role.
to this explosion?
That's not my role. That'll all be part of the investigation.
So you haven't asked it?
That's not my role.
Do you, has L&I, can I just ask, L&I, has L&I talked about any history of structural or any other recent calls to that block?
That would be a question for L&I.
You haven't asked? That's not something you guys know yet?
We are, and let me say one more time, this is an active, ongoing incident. It's a very complex and dynamic situation. And our overriding goal right now is to locate any known or potential casualties from this incident. And that is going to continue to be our priority to the exclusion of all others. There are a lot of investigative agencies down at the scene and doing work behind the scenes. And I have no doubt that in due course their investigation will answer any questions that anybody might have about the cause.
And Commissioner, I know there's a lot of questions to come out of this press conference, but isn't a representative from PGW here that could address that question?
We're updating on the incident. So we're updating on the active, ongoing incident, and we want to make sure also that we have anybody who's watching this who might be curious about when and whether they're going to be able to go back in their homes has all the information they need to make that decision. And that's really what we're all focused on right now versus doing a retrospective investigation. As I've said several times, we have a lot of agencies down at the scene, and they will start their investigation when we are done with the work we need to move this incident to the next level.
And there actually is a question for PGW in regards to that, because neighbors are asking us, at this point, is gas still turned off in that neighborhood, or is it?
So that's what I was talking about earlier. The gas is going to be off and on throughout the course of today and potentially longer, because as we do this heavy excavation work to try to answer that question about potential casualties, the gas service is going to be turned on and turned off. So PGW is basically at this point taking their direction from us about which gas services we need on or off. So I think to the point, if you live in that block, there's still going to be some uncertainty about when you can go home, whether you can go home, what you're going to find when you go home. So again, that's what we have the Red Cross number, and certainly we're going to have Office of Emergency Management staff, and there will be fire marshals down there, again, doing whatever they can do at this point on the investigation. So there are plenty of folks there to answer those questions, but the real answer to that question is it depends. It's going to depend on the specific property. It's going to depend on what we're doing in the recovery operation, and it's going to be pretty dynamic.
Who's the lead investigative? You said there were lots of agencies down there. Who's the lead investigative agency then?
I'm not sure we know that yet. I think the lead investigative agency for the fire would be the fire marshal's office within the fire department.
You said that, I think you just said a minute ago that whatever the fire marshal's office has done to this point in terms of an investigation. So the fire marshal's office has clearly done something to kind of see, to try to get an idea.
The fire marshal's office has been on the scene and doing interviews and talking to people since right after the incident occurred, assisted by the police department, ATF, as we always do for any type of fire investigation. There are other, depending on what we start to learn about the incident, there are federal agencies that might become involved. The State Public Utility Commission, the Federal Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or FEMSA. So they've all expressed some interest in this incident. And again, as we get to the point where that is our priority, investigation is our priority, we'll release whatever information we can about it.
Can you
But
tell
that's
us a
not the
little
place
bit about
for
what the fire marshal's office may have? They've probably given you some initial indication of what they think they're looking at there. Can you give us that?
The fire marshal's office has been focused on interviewing all the people in that neighborhood to first and foremost understand who was where when, to help us answer some of these questions about potential casualties. So that really has been what they're focused on. The next order of business is to make the street safe for that heavy construction equipment, so we can start delayering all the debris that's on the site. So again, until we're able to remove that debris and get it off the site, from a physical standpoint, we're not going to be able to, gather or look for any type of physical evidence.
Have you thought about what if this had happened next week with kids out of school, people off work in that neighborhood?
I think about things like this every week, every day. This is what we do, 24/7, 365. We've already had another working fire this morning. We were in a tank farm fire a couple days ago. We've had 12 working fires since then. So this is what we do, 24/7, 365. And it's our job to think about all the possibilities in any type of incident that might occur. So yeah, I worry about the citizens of this city literally all day, every day. We are very fortunate that, at least we think, because again, we don't know. We still have a lot of uncertainties. There aren't a lot of additional folks who have been reported missing. So I'm hopeful that, as tragic as this was, I'm hopeful that, you know, that number of 2, that's as much as we're going to find. But we just can't know. We can't know for sure. So again, our hearts are truly with the anybody who's been affected by this, and I can tell you, our members as well. You know, the firefighters who were first arriving, our medics. You know, we live and regrettably sometimes die to make rescues, and it's tough for us when we can't. But I can promise you, and again, you've all seen the video, these folks literally went right into a fire while there were buildings collapsing and energized. Even when I got there, there were still energized wires we were working under. Still had leaking gas. You could smell the gas. So this was a very, very dangerous incident, and it remains so. It's just in a different phase.
Are there any remaining risks at that scene right now? I know you say you don't know the cause. Are you concerned because you don't know the cause? What could still be out there while you're?
There's a lot of remaining risks. We still have buildings that are basically buildings that have been exposed to an explosion and could collapse at any second. So yeah, that's the one reason this is going to be slow, is because there are a lot of hazards still remaining at the scene. So again, we're still making sure that all the utilities in that area are safe for us to work. That the street, we don't want something to happen to the street once we put heavy equipment on it, and that could happen to any street at any time. But particularly after we've flowed, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. So what's left of those buildings is filled with water. Even though we put water on it all night, there could still be pockets of hidden fire. So yeah, there's a lot of hazards still on this incident. Just because you don't see any fire burning doesn't mean that this isn't still a very, and I'm using the word complex deliberately. The reality is these are 3 row houses that were blown up. So we don't know exactly what we're going to find. Again, the good news is there is nobody better and more experienced at this type of work than we are. I mean, building collapses unfortunately are not an anomaly in this city. We have our Pennsylvania Task Force 1, our Special Operations Command. Again, these folks, our fire marshals, are among the most experienced in the entire industry. So we are going to have to move slow and steady to make sure that we keep everybody safe. And this is something, answering some of these questions, it's going to take days, weeks, months, potentially even years.
Why would there have been energized lines? Why would the lines still have been energized by the time you got there? Why wouldn't those have been down that more quickly?
Power lines are always energized.
Can't they take them down?
No.
They're not energized.
They can't be taken down remotely. You have to actually send somebody out to trip the circuit breaker on the pole. So quick safety message while we're at it. If you ever see a downed wire of any kind, don't touch it, don't drive over it, don't go near it. Call 911 because there's not a remote shutoff for electrical lines or gas lines for that matter. So that's why to shut off the gas to the area that we needed to shut off yesterday, and again, they were right there with us. PGW's crews were right out there digging up the street to be able to access the valves that we needed to shut off a large area quickly. To make it safe, so we could go in and try to make that second rescue attempt. And same with PECO. PECO was there. They're a critical partner for us.
Can you confirm the address of the first home to collapse?
I can't answer the first home. There are 3 row homes that have collapsed completely. There are 2 others that have severe structural damage. Probably not going to give the addresses right now.
Is the ATF on the scene?
Again, the ATF has been there since as soon as possible after the incident occurred, as they always are. The ATF, again, this is another thing I say over and over, it is not uncommon. We actually have a joint task force with the ATF and the police department. So all of our fires have, we have embedded ATF agents on that task force, and we work together 24/7, 365. So the fact that it's on this incident is that's what we do.
Right.
And again,
Have they
another
gi-
great partnership.
Have they given you any indication that they're concerned about, we know what the ATF does, if they're concerned for some reason that they need to work harder at what may have happened to you?
Well, we always work hard. There is no work harder. So every fire that we investigate, our fire marshals have literally been working around the clock for the past weeks, months. They've been working literally constantly dealing with all the fires that we just talked about, along with the police department and ATF. So to be really clear, we work hard on every incident. We treat every incident the
I wasn't
same.
implying you didn't work hard.
I want to make sure, because
ATF.
when people
I'm
listen,
asking if the ATF was going to, some reason why they would have to work on it.
They're there with all those incidents. Again, that's ATF is on all of our incidents with us, every single one. Whether it's a row house fire in North Philly, South Philly, the tank farm fire, ATF is always there with us. So the fact that ATF is on this incident, there's really nothing to read into that.
Not yet, anyway.
ATF investigates fires.
And explosions.
And fires. The other people that we work with, obviously the PPD investigators. PPD has experts as well. But again, these are the folks that we work with round the clock and have been working with round the clock for years.
Can you talk a bit more about the conditions that the first responders faced last night and the actions that they took?
Well, I think the condition they faced was essentially, I think as everybody saw, it was they went into again, I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but when you look at, everybody's seen the video by now, it was literally a firestorm. In addition to going into that fire, crawling into the fire, the buildings were collapsing around them. And there were energized power lines, which again, we really, our protocol is to not spend a lot of time around those, because we're not, we unfortunately do have our members get electrocuted. So that's a real hazard for us, as well as the gas leaks. I mean, when I got down there, you could smell gas. We still had energized power lines, still had buildings collapsing, and we had been able to knock down most of the fire at that point, but that was just kind of keeping it at bay. It really takes, you have to shut the gas off before you can truly extinguish a gas-fed fire. So they, again, quite literally crawled into a gas-fed fire to try to make a rescue, and they're disappointed that didn't work out. But again, we're very fortunate, and we're truly within seconds of losing several firefighters as well, as that secondary collapse occurred, and not to mention whatever could have happened with the power lines and et cetera, et cetera. So it was, beyond difficult conditions, just truly chaotic.
Can you tell us how long did it take them to get the gas off to allow you guys to get in there? What was the time period in there?
It took several hours to dig up the street and get to those street valves. So they were working hard. They were working hard. Those crews, I give them a lot of credit. Those crews, the Pico line crews, water department was down there, always supporting us. So again, it's really there's a huge team that goes into these incidents, and a lot of folks on that team. Again, even though the fire's out, and of course we are back doing what we do, which is addressing an average 1,000 emergency incidents every 24 hours. A lot of those folks are still going to be working over the holidays to make sure that we get this incident to the next level.
Did you have any other homes or structures that had damage apart from the 3 and then the other 2? It seemed in that neighborhood there was an awful lot of glass, pretty far from the blast zone.
Yeah, there were a lot of homes that were damaged. So there was debris. Even we set the command post pretty far back from the front of the buildings that were destroyed, and there was still debris. We had to move around debris to get to that. So yeah, a lot of broken windows, a lot of other debris throughout the neighborhood. And again, this is another reason the investigation takes time. We'll be looking at all of that, because that will help answer some of the questions. Those are some of the things that the specialized expertise we have, again, with us all the time from ATF, from PPD, will help us do, because that's all part of the investigation.
Do you have a characterization instead of a lot? Like, would it be dozens or a few, like 6?
Thousands?
No,
Oh,
dozens.
of homes?
How many homes? Like,
No,
how
we
many
don't. No, we don't know that. No,
problems?
once again, this is an active and ongoing incident. We're still, yeah, no, it's a lot. I don't have any more than a lot. But
Know how many people were displaced by the fire?
think at the high water mark we had about 60 people who were displaced, most of whom found shelter with family and friends. So I guess I would say probably more than a dozen homes, probably a couple dozen homes if I had to guess.
And is there still an estimated 10 people or 10 homes without utilities?
Like I said, that's going to change. At any point I tell you that, it's going to change potentially minutes later as we try to make that scene safe so we can do the things that need to be done to answer all of your questions. All right, thank you all. Don't forget to check your smoke alarms. Be safe.